Hey fish friends, how's it going? I hope everyone's doing well. My name is Zenzo and you're watching Tazawa Tanks. While I keep a lot of different fish in my home aquariums, of the 35 fish tanks that I currently operate, the majority of those have African cichlids. I do talk about African cichlids quite a bit. I am breeding them for profit, and I get questions all the time from viewers about African cichlid care. Today I'm going to focus on a couple African cichlids, specifically from Lake Malawi. Those are the Peacocks and the Mbuna. Before we get into the fish, let's talk a little bit about Lake Malawi. So Lake Malawi is a large lake in the eastern part of Africa. It's in the eastern Rift Valley, very close to Lake Tanganyika, which is another very popular lake where African cichlids come from. Lake Malawi is the fourth largest lake in the world as far as freshwater lakes by volume, and the ninth largest lake by area. There are a tremendous amount of fish in Lake Malawi. Some scientists say that there's between 700 and 1,000 different species of fish in the lake. So let's talk about some of those species, and let's start with peacocks. Now I am going to be talking about peacock cichlids, and I'm not really going to talk about Haplochromis at all. However, peacocks and haps are very similar as far as their species, and also very similar as far as their care needs. The main difference between the peacocks and the haps is going to be size, and some of the haps are a little bit more focused on predation, as they are larger predatory fish and will have a higher protein-based diet. I do have a couple of haps in this tank, some smaller haps, but they look very much like the peacocks and do receive the same care as the peacocks get. So peacocks are often called Aulonocara. Aulonocara is the scientific name for the fish, but in the hobby we mostly refer to them as peacocks. They are a semi-aggressive African cichlid, and I say semi-aggressive because that's based on comparing them to other African cichlids and other cichlids in general, but they can be quite aggressive compared to other fish in the aquarium hobby. Generally, they're anywhere between 4 to 6 inches. However, I have seen some male peacocks that are 7 to 8 inches in length, and those are usually very large, older males. As far as lifespan, in the aquarium hobby, we typically see peacocks living around 4 to 5 years, but they can live upwards of 8 years if kept in optimum conditions and fed a healthy diet. Peacocks are very active swimmers, so they do need open space. So it is important that when you do create your aquarium environment, that you create an environment that has a lot of open area for the fish to swim back and forth. Peacocks are very colorful. You'll often see brightly colored males with yellows and blues and reds and oranges, pink sometimes, and any combination of those colors. There is a significant dimorphism between the males and the females, meaning that the males are usually larger than the females. They look a little bit different, and they have significant coloration where the females are usually a little bit more muted in colors. For the most part, the species are the same, and the different color variants are really based on the region of Lake Malawi in which they come from. That's one of the reasons why it's very easy to create hybrids of peacocks, as they are the same fish, just different color variants from different parts of the lake. As far as tank size, a 55-gallon tank is a minimum, but I would recommend anywhere from 75 gallons or greater, as a larger water volume will come into play in aiding with being able to keep a lot of fish together and reducing aggression, and giving the fish more space to swim. Temperature range should be anywhere between 76 and 82 degrees, and the pH should be anywhere between 7.8 and 8.6. I have seen peacocks kept in lower pH, as a lot of them are raised in captivity. However, they do thrive when the pH is elevated. Peacocks are mouth brooders, like most African cichlids, meaning that the female will scatter her eggs in a little spawning area that the male creates as he swims in the sand and brushes it around. And when the female lays her eggs, the male will come right behind her and he will fertilize the eggs with his sperm. The female will then pick up the eggs and hold them in her mouth until the eggs hatch and the fry are free swimming, and then they can swim away and fend for themselves. Peacocks are best kept in groups. This will help in reducing some of the aggression that they will display to other cichlids. In addition, it's best that they are kept with their own species, as this will ensure that they are getting the right diet for those fish. As far as diet is concerned, they are omnivores, but do lean more on the protein side. In the wild, they'll eat insects, larvae, crustaceans, zooplankton, other small fish if they happen to catch, some fry or something. And in the aquarium hobby, I would say that it's important to give them a very quality pellet food. You could also do some quality flake food if you do have a good cichlid flake. And then also supplementing that with some crustaceans like shrimp and small snails and other insects. Now we're going to talk about another favorite fish from Lake Malawi, the Mbuna. Before we start, I do want to apologize on the clarity of this aquarium. This is one of my 75-gallon tanks, and this is my Mbuna tank down in the fish room. I recently did a water change before filming, so there is some sediment still floating around. And I also just gave them some seaweed to munch on to keep them active while filming. Mbunas are also from Lake Malawi, like the peacocks are, and they do have similar requirements as far as water parameters, but the species is very different. They are a semi to very aggressive fish. On the lower end, you might have some yellow labs or some yellow-tailed ACI that might be a little bit more docile. And then you might have things like a Johanni or an Aratus cichlid that are very aggressive and can be hyper-aggressive. The size of these fish are anywhere between 3 inches and 6 inches. Most of them in the aquarium hobby are between 4 to 5 inches. I have seen some very large examples at public aquariums in the past where some of the Mbuna were upwards of 8 inches. Their lifespan is similar to those of peacocks, where generally in the aquarium hobby they're living 4 to 5 years. But they can live upwards to 8 to 10 years with proper care. One of the big differences between peacocks and Mbuna are that Mbuna are rock dwellers, while the peacocks are open water swimmers and spend time in open waters or along the base of the lake or your aquarium. The Mbuna are more focused on swimming in and out of rocks and caves and things like that. So it is important to have a lot of rock work and hiding places in your aquarium. Not only will this help the fish to feel more secure about their environment, but it also will aid in reducing some aggression by allowing some fish to have places to hide. Another big difference between Mbuna and peacocks is there's less dimorphism between the males and females, meaning that in some species it's very difficult to tell males and females apart. Sometimes there will be some Mbuna species where the males will display a different color, and sometimes they'll look exactly the same. As far as size, they often are the same size, so it does take a well-trained person to identify a male versus a female Mbuna cichlid. As far as coloration, you don't get quite the same coloration that you do in the peacocks, but there still is a wide variety of blues and yellows and blacks and oranges, and sometimes even white and albino variants. Another major difference between Mbuna and peacocks is diet. While Mbuna are also omnivorous, meaning that they will eat some animal matter as well as plant matter, they lean more on the vegetarian side of the spectrum, meaning that they do need some plant-based foods, whether it be algae or seaweed or vegetables. I often feed mine zucchini and spinach in addition to giving them seaweed and algae wafers and specific veggie-based pellets. And sometimes I will also feed them shrimp and crustaceans and things like that. They are also a mouth brooder, so they have the same breeding habits as the peacocks, where the female will lay her eggs in an area that is cleared away by the male. The male will fertilize those eggs, and the female will pick up those eggs and hold them in her mouth until they are ready to swim away. So the eggs will hatch in the female's mouth, and then you'll have fry swimming around in her mouth. And once their yolk sac has been absorbed and they are large enough to fend for themselves, off they go. As far as water parameters, they're going to need the same water parameters that you have for your peacocks. The temperature range will be 76 to 82 degrees, which would be ideal. And again, a pH between 7.8 and 8.6. As far as tank size, they are not an open water swimmer like the peacock, so you can get away with doing a little bit smaller of a tank. 55 gallons or greater, again, is suggested, and the larger the better. However, I have been successful in keeping Mbuna in smaller tanks like 40 breeders. However, that does require a lot of hiding places, and it does require a lot of filtration and water changes. Another thing that I really enjoy with Mbuna is their characteristics. So they tend to be a little bit more playful and aggressive at the same time. So it is often enjoyable to watch them kind of swim around and interact with one another, swimming in and out of their rock caves and their hides, and seeing how eager they are to eat when you come up to the tank. I hope you found this introductory video into African cichlids to be helpful. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to read them down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.